All right. I welcome you again to the UNU-INWEH public event, the Science Talks. For those joining us for the first time, I say welcome. We are glad you can join us today. Thank you very much. I am your host for today, Professor Grace Oluwasanya. Before presenting our distinguished speaker, please note that there will be an interactive Q&A session at the end of the presentation. At that point, there will be room for comments, Q&A, and any other contributions. Please type your questions or comments in the Q&A chat box, and we will address them. Thank you. Also, videos of all our previous science talks from 2024 are available on demand on our YouTube channel at https://unu.edu/science-talks, ending with an S. If you browse through our website, you will be able to navigate yourself, to this address. The topic of today's talk is a new way to think about and measure water security. So let's talk. Our presenter is my cousin. Don't ask me how we became a cousin. And in fact, I won't bore you with the details of how we became a cousin. Professor Sera Young. Professor Sera is a globally recognized expert in global health, nutritional anthropology, and water insecurity, with a distinguished academic and research career focused on maternal and child health in low-resource settings. Drawing on our interdisciplinary training in medical anthropology from 3 prestigious institutions, she brings a unique biocultural lens to some of the most pressing global health challenges. Our pioneering work on the first cross-culturally validated tools to measure water insecurity, popularly known as Water InSecurity Experiences scales, acronym WISE, has transformed how researchers, policymakers, the community of practice, and humanitarian organizations understand and address water-related vulnerabilities. These tools have been implemented in over 90 countries by more than 100 institutions, providing critical data to inform global health and relevant development strategies. At INWEH, she leads the Water, Nutrition, and Health Equity, and she's also a professor of anthropology and the co-director for the Center for Water at Northwestern University, Chicago, USA. She is also co-editor-in-chief of PLOS Water and has co-authored more than 180 peer-reviewed publications. Professor Sera, I will say hearty congratulations on the freshly minted African Water and Food Experiences Network, which I will call your newest career baby, which was launched just a week ago. So join me in welcoming Professor Sera Young. Professor Sera, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grace. Hi, everyone. Can you wave if you can hear me? Hey, okay, great. You're teeny tiny in my screen, so if your faces are looking puzzled or suddenly you can't hear me, I won't necessarily know, but I want you to feel comfortable to interrupt me at any point for clarification or whatever. I mean, professors...
Don't worry, we'll shut off the camera so you just face your screen.
But professors are good at just blah, blah, blahing, and I don't want to blah, blah, blah. I would like to talk about things that are interesting to you in the room. So please interrupt.
All right.
Okay. So I wear many hats, and I'm happy to answer questions both about Northwestern or about PLOS Water. I think you in the room know more about UNU-INWEH than me, but anyway. So today I want to answer 4 questions, and the first of which is what is water insecurity? And to do that, I'm going to give you a backstory that you don't often get from peer-reviewed papers. I'm shocked I have 180, Grace. Wow. It makes me a little tired. But so this is not the story in the most of the peer-reviewed papers, is that I'm trained in nutrition. And I had a large NIH grant from National Institutes of Health, the US NIH, to study food insecurity in the context of HIV and what we call the first 1,000 days. So that's the year prior to delivery and then 2 years postpartum. And it was a beautiful study design where we were measuring food insecurity at all of these time points. So we could really understand how food insecurity changed across time and the determinants of it. But that was with my nutrition hat on. With my anthropology hat on, I was thinking like, okay, let me make sure we're measuring what these people care about. And women are really busy, don't want to waste time talking with them about things they don't care about. But in 2013, what I learned was that food was what I came to study, but water is what was on people's minds. And so these women had stories about how water was really a detriment to their health and to the health of their eventual infants. And this woman on the left is a very special woman in my life. I finally listened to what women were saying with her story. So she was pregnant out to here. You can't quite tell from the photo, but she's out to here. And she's going to fetch water. And you might wonder why, because behind her, there's a sim tank that's collecting rainwater. But her mother-in-law, here on the left, is not letting her use that water. And so she was really quite pregnant, but still obliged to get water. And she went into premature labor with great harm to her and herself. I can tell you she is okay now. And in fact, I was in Nairobi last week with her. She came to the big Getting Wise event that we had at the UN campus there. And we could all appreciate her for inspiring us all. So what I was wondering is, could we quantify these experiences with water insecurity, not food, water? Because we have this beautiful study design and we know that food insecurity, the experiences with food security could be measured. Their indicator 2.1.2, the Zero Hunger SDG. And so with that in mind, I went to the water security literature to see how are people measuring water. And I was a baby assistant professor at the time, like really eager to make a mark. And I thought, okay, we have a great study design. Let's just add in one more measurement of water insecurity, or water security if you're optimistic or pessimistic. And what I learned is that there are a number of ways of measuring water, and they usually touch on one of 4 domains. So there's the physical availability, and that's like hydrologic indicators, like how much water is out there to be had, how much water is in the lake, how much water is in the basin. And then there's the access question, which is how much water can you get to? And that's either physically accessible, so like infrastructure measurements, or if can you pay for your water? Are you allowed to walk to the water? So there's a lot of flavors of access, and we're good at measuring the infrastructure part, but not so much these other things. When it comes to acceptability and use, there's both the water that you consume, so drinking, brushing teeth, but then there's the water that you use for hygiene. So it's a little more complicated than food in that sense, because food we only eat. And we're good at measuring the safety of water, but the other uses are not so well measured. And then the 4th domain is stability or reliability across time. So these green check marks indicate where we're good at measuring. But what I was looking for is something more holistic that got at access, use, and stability or reliability across time. And the way I define water security is that it exists when these 4 domains are present. And because access and use, like you can't access or use something that's not there, we are measuring access, use, and reliability, but implicit in that is the physical availability. So that, and I'll just say water security exists when these 4 domains are met. So that is my thinking on water insecurity. I'm going to pause for a second and ask if there are any questions or clarifications so far, or comments.
Please go ahead. The Q&A will be at the end of the session.
Yes, boss, I'm on it. Okay, here we go. So what are the WISE scales? The WISE scales are my babies. I've two daughters, but I also have the scales that I think of as children too. They have many parents, however. The first scale was born in 2018, and that was the household level water insecurity experiences scale. This is the work of many scholars working across disciplines and time zones and stages of their career. But what we did was, well, I'll get to that on the next slide. So what you have here is you have the household version, and then a couple years later, in collaboration with Gallup, the polling agency, we developed the individual level. They're the same exact questions, and I'll show you those stems. It's just one is at the household level, and one is asking at the individual level. And the way we did that is we identified roughly 30 questions that I had figured, came to my mind from being in Kenya. Other people had a Bolivian specific one, an Ethiopian specific one, a Texas, Mexico border one. We said, okay, these are 32 items. Let's see how they work. And how they work, meaning we collect the data, we put on our thinking caps, so we did a lot of statistics. And all of the stuff that we publish is open access. And what you'll see here is you can find them on wiseskills.org, like how we made these skills. And maybe you don't really care about water insecurity. I forgive you. But maybe you do care about scale development. And in this case, this paper here with the star has been my most highly cited paper. I had no expectation of doing it. I wrote this paper. I mean, it's cited like 7,000 times. And I wrote this paper because I needed this paper, because scale development was like a black box. People would say, okay, there would be like a paragraph in a peer-reviewed paper, like, we developed a scale. Or there would be a textbook like this thick on scale development. And, this paragraph didn't tell me enough. And I didn't want to read a whole textbook. So this is like a happy medium, like the Goldilocks principle. And I recommend it. It will save you a lot of heartache if you are developing skills. So the HYs and the IYs, household and individual items, are the same. They ask about how often in the last, and then you can use different recall periods depending on your assessment needs. Have you, for the individual or anyone in your household, experienced these 12 universal items? So how often have you had to change plans because of problems with water? How often have you been angry because of your water situation? And you'll notice that the phrasing covers both too much, too little, or poor quality water. So we're just getting at problems with water more generally. The responses, so if I asked Dr. Grace, how often did you have to change food you prepared because of problems with water? And she said sometimes, she would get a 2 for that item. So there are 12 items, you can maximum of 3, so the range is 36, 0. You can score 0, which means you're not at all water insecure, or very high, 36. It takes about 3 minutes to ask. And then there's a shorter version that we developed. I'm happy to say more about that. That takes only 1 minute. And there are advantages and disadvantages of each. We've also developed categories for each level of the scale. So we can talk about the proportion of people who are moderate to highly water insecure, or low water insecurity, or experiencing no water insecurity. Now, who wants another water indicator? It's a great question, and I think that a lot of academics have been guilty of measuring things because they could be measured, but we really need to make the case for why this is useful. And so there are 6 key features of the WISE scales that I want to share with you. And the first is that they're precise, especially the IWISE scale. We can see who exactly is, as the SDGs go, being left behind. So you can see, because we measure at the level of the individual, this is just what it looks like in Afghanistan. These are nationally representative data for Afghanistan. You can see how it's different or similar between men and women. You can see how it's different or similar by age or by any individual characteristic that you collect. And it's for this reason that the Joint Monitoring Program recommended WISE as a priority gender-specific indicator for WASH for monitoring progress towards SDG 6.1 and 6.2. I think the other thing that I'm really excited about these scales is the feature that they're holistic. So usually we're thinking about measuring drinking water, and drinking water is important, but all of us do more than drink water. We wash our hands, we prepare food. We need it for a range of things. And what you can see here is that we're measuring both consumption of water, hygiene stuff, but also the psychosocial dimensions of water, like worry, anger, and shame. And we know from the food security literature that those are really important. As soon as you start getting worried about food, your behavior changes. And we can make the argument the same is true for water. And so because of the familiarity of the food security measures, the value of experiential measures for food security, the scales were endorsed by Maximo Torero, the chief economist at FAO, which was nice. Third is that they're a bridge. So I don't think it's so hard to convince people in the water sector that water security experiences matter. But what I'm really proud of is that we can link water security to other domains like food security, and I'll show you that in a little bit, or like maternal depression, or HIV viral load, or prosperity. We have a lot of different outcomes that we can really say, like, hey, if a person is water insecure, they're much more likely to be A, B, or C. And this is into helping to integrate water into other sectors. So we have this impact report. There's soft copy available online. I have a hard copy just behind me, where we talk a little bit about the Y scales. And then really, this is a policy forward document. We say, like, okay, maybe you don't care about water, but you care about gender. Well, here's a page on water and gender, or about climate change, or about governance, or the humanitarian settings. There's really a way to connect the WISE data to a lot of outcomes or topics that people care about. The fourth feature, so we've got, it's precise, it's holistic, it bridges, is that it is comparable. So the WISE scales hold up to make cross-country comparisons. So we can see how water insecurity in Chicago compares to water in the United States, compares to water insecurity in Australia, or Malawi, or India, et cetera, et cetera. And this is really useful quality for being a global indicator. And so we can compare, for example, how men and women are different in their water security across lots of countries. And this is a figure from the JMP report in 2024 when they focused on gender. The fifth is that they're intuitive. So they're easily understood by non-experts. And I think that counts for a lot when there's a lot of information coming at policymakers and they don't have time to really sort of think about what it means. So this is from a paper that was published in PLOS Water last year. And what you can see, these are data. I'm just going to zoom in on one. This is a spider diagram from data from Sierra Leone. And what you can see around the outside are the 12 items. So how often were you worried about water? How often, et cetera, et cetera. Did you have no water at all in the house? And you can see that the mean score is for baseline is in yellow and in end line is in blue. And you can see, like, without needing any statistics, like, things really improved. They're understandable by non-experts. And maybe I don't have the slide here, but it's kind of exciting. I ran into Nelson, who is and it was both Nelson and Rashid, who are leadership of AMCO, the African Ministerial Council on Water. And they were like, oh yeah, the WISE scales. What I always say is points on the WISE scales. I tell my ministers points on the WISE scales are votes against them. And I was like, that is a powerful way of describing these data, and these are his words, not mine. So they're understood by non-experts. And then finally, the WISE scales are relevant. So this is a slide I've used at the World Bank that they talk about, now the World Bank is talking about a world free of poverty on a livable planet. And this is the Kenyan delegation from the Ministry of Water and also from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We were at the World Bank 2 Fridays ago saying, like, not me saying, they were saying, like, this is really the future for understanding how water is showing up or not in people's lives. So it's highly relevant. So that's part 2. What are the WISE scales? You now know a little bit what the WISE scales are. Any clarification questions, or should I continue, Dr. Grace?
Please continue.
Okay. So it's great that we've developed something, but what have they told us already? It is early days. I mean, I've been working hard on the Y scales for the last 12 years, but evidence is accumulating quickly from around the world that all of these outcomes are predicted by water insecurity. We're still, it's a very young field compared to food security, where food security has been measured since the 80s. But because it's young, it means that there's also a lot of opportunity for discovery and contribution by folks like you. So today I'm just going to focus on the relationships we've seen with food security and nutrition, but there's plenty I can say about all of these pathways. So in 2021, we collaborated with Gallup, which is a polling agency, and the Food and Agriculture Organization. So FAO hires Gallup to collect data in 100 and some countries every year on food insecurity. And we coordinated such that the same countries that had food insecurity experiences measured, not just the same countries, the same individuals. In those same individuals, water insecurity experiences were measured as well. And what we found was that if you were water insecure, you were much more likely to be food insecure. So what you're looking at here in black is if you just say if you are moderate to severely water insecure, what's the likelihood of being moderate to severely food insecure? And you can see in black, when you are not adjusting, or sorry, in blue, when you're not adjusting for anything, in North Africa, you are roughly 3.8 times to be more food insecure, to be moderate to severely food insecure than if you weren't water insecure. I hope that's clear. And then we had this like really great opportunity to control for all the covariates that we know shape food insecurity, like age, urbanicity, income, education level, employment status. And you can see that the relationship is attenuated. So all of the numbers in black are smaller than the numbers in blue. But you can still see that water insecurity was associated with a 2 to 3 times higher odds of experiencing moderate to severely food insecure than even when controlling for all that stuff. And this is across 25 countries, 31,000 individuals. This is a really robust finding that has since been replicated in many places. And what I want to show you here is what the data look like for Africa. So last week we shared sort of a glimpse of the prevalence of water insecurity across many, 36 African countries, so pretty exciting. And then this is a big shout out to Indira Bose, who did these analyses. She's a postdoc at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. What she demonstrated is, so what you're looking at it in the black number is moderate to high water insecurity. So if you're moderate to highly water insecure, you're X many times likely to be food insecure. But what she then did is looked at how low water insecurity predicted moderate to severe water insecurity. And what you can see, sort of like there's a range, but what you can see is that across all countries, across most countries, even low water insecurity matters for food insecurity. So this is telling. That means we need to pay, if we care about food and nutrition, we need to pay attention to water. So that's just a little glimpse of what this has already told us. I'm going to conclude by, there's a saying from John F. Kennedy, ask not what you can do, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I think I'm going to reverse and say, well, what can the Y scales? Ask what the Y scales can do for you. And I think it can help our work in a lot of different ways. I'm now much more attentive to figuring out how to help other people than climbing the academic ladder. I'm grown now. I'm a full professor. So I'm here to make an impact with the work that we're doing outside of academia. And for that, we've created a few things. We have a manual. Let me just get a copy. I love this manual. And then the impact report here. So we have a hard copy manual, and this manual is now available in 4 major languages: English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And here's the impact report that I mentioned. But the manual is one thing, and it's great, but last week we launched an interactive training course. It will be multilingual, video rich, an online course, and it will be housed at UNU-INWEH. And that's exciting because this is, I would say, best practices for pedagogical approaches to teaching people, especially low literacy people, is helping them to see what it is in action. So this is really emulating what the FAO has done with online training for the food insecurity experiences scale. I was so delighted when Dr. Grace and others said, "Oh, you should have it here at the UNU." And I'm happy to report also that FAO has a new Sustainable Development Goal indicator on diet quality. This is Lynette Neufeld, the Director of Nutrition at FAO. And they've invited us to travel around with them to help. We are not a Sustainable Development Goal indicator yet. It is my dream that we could become that. But we will be training on WISE scales alongside SDG indicators, which feels like some sort of blessing from FAO. We have additional translations. So we have the WISE scale itself is developed. It's translated into like 80 or 90 languages, and those are all on the website. There's the course, and then there's the manual, like I said, in these 4 languages. Not everyone loves to do statistical analysis, and not everyone loves to have paper forms. So what we've done is we've developed easier streamlining ways for data collection. So the WISE scales are coded in MWater and also in REDCap. And and this is the royal we, Scott Miller, who is at Charity Water, which is a big water donor, funder. He has written in a package to analyze the WISE data. And, this package is really robust. The National Statistics Office in Uganda was using it just last week to look at their data. So far I've shown you guidance, we have translations, we have coding. We also have reports, like one-pagers, where we talk about, like, this is what water insecurity looks like in the United States. This is what water insecurity looks like in Canada. This is what it looks like in Malawi. And some of that is summarized in the impact report here that I showed you, and it's available online. And these are what the one-pagers look like. You saw this for Afghanistan, but we have it for many other countries. And we have lots of data. And the data are exciting because we have both nationally representative data. Now, all of the countries in purple that you see are those for which we have nationally representative data. A lot of that comes from Gallup, but the government of Mexico, for example, has been collecting WISE data for the last 4 years. The government of Brazil will be doing it this year. The government of Uganda and Malawi are doing it like last year. It's not just Gallup who are doing it. And then these dots indicate where we have site-specific data being collected. The light purple just means that they were to be expected. This map is a little bit out of date because we now have all of the data in hand. And those data are not for me to sit on and write papers that 12 people read. They are for robust policy and for making good, sound investment decisions based on the knowledge that we have. They're a global public good, and they will be made available soon, so that we can know and see what, for example, the prevalence of water insecurity looks like across, for example, Africa. And at this point, I want to just flag that I am very keen for the WISE scales to be an indicator to be used by the African Ministerial Council on Water. I think if you say your big dreams enough, maybe one day they'll come true. So I don't know how much you know, but this is the Africa Vision 2063 has been launched. And this year is the year for WASH, for an emphasis on WASH. So I'm really delighted that the government of the Republic of Malawi has proposed WISE as an indicator for the AU Vision 2063. And Uganda is, from what I understand from last week, Uganda and Kenya are also planning to do so. But if you have other mechanisms for proposing this, I'm all ears. We also have momentum. It was a great honor to be recognized with this medal for public health champion from the president of the National Institutes of Public Health. And I want to say that while I was on stage receiving this is on behalf of many, many people who have been working really hard to roll this out across many countries throughout Latin America, as you could see on the previous map. And this is not just me. So we have these really amazing networks. The first network you can see up on top there is the WISE Latin America Caribbean Network. It was launched in 2023 in Mexico City. This is a robust network, and we have a website. I should put the website up there. It's WISE LAC, easy enough to find. In September of 2025, we launched a second network in the Asia Pacific region with Jackie Webster. I should say Pablo Gaitan was an important co-founder of the WISE LAC. He's a professor at IKITA at Iberoamericana University. In our Asia Pacific network is housed at University of New South Wales and University of Technology Sydney, with big shout out to Greg Webster and Jackie Webster and Greg Leslie. And as of last week, the new baby is often the Africa Water and Food Experiences Network. This was launched at the UN campus on World Africa Day last Monday. And we have just the enthusiasm and excitement for making this happen was really life-giving. So there's more to say about this, but all are welcome to join all of these. I'm just going to conclude by thanking you for being on this journey to water security. It might look like everything that I do is fancy and fun and easy. It's not. You're seeing this at a really nice moment, but we've been working on this for a long time. I mean, we have this timeline starting in 2017, but I mean, I've been working on this since my first daughter was an infant, and she's 13. So we have come a long way, as you can see, but we're not done yet. So 2026, there's a lot of events scheduled. Some have already happened, but we are working hard to get to the UN Water Conference, where we will launch a flagship report. And I'm hopeful that we will find country partners to have a side session with at the meeting. This will be preceded by the UN World Data Forum, where we will have a session about the training materials. But as you can see, Switzerland is next week, where we'll be talking about WISE in humanitarian contexts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a wide tent. We really welcome everyone to participate. Ain't nothing cheap, ain't nothing free. So I really want to appreciate the people who have funded this work. And I will leave it there for you to ask me all of the hard questions that you want. Thanks very much.
Wow. Just a minute. Yeah, can you see us better now?
I do. I see your pretty faces. Thank you.
And it's a full house with the director at the end of the table. I hope you can spot him.
Okay, well now I feel like maybe I should have said something different. I hope I made you proud, Dr. Grace.
Okay. Let me start you on a simple note by just asking you, what is the most surprising insight you've learned from applying WISE globally?
Yeah. Well, I would say one big surprise is that a lot of problems with water have gone invisible because we've been just measuring what we can see. So these scales are making some real suffering that had gone invisible visible. And for that, I mean, I'll bring up the example of Annie. It seemed like she was fine because Lake Victoria was right behind her and there was infrastructure on her compound, but she wasn't allowed to use that. And therefore she went into early labor.
That's quite that's quite a story actually, and it brings goose pimples, to one's body, that in a context where water itself is an issue, and you still have these dynamics, and it's chilling because it's now a woman to a woman. I mean, you know, a mother-in-law to, you know, a very vulnerable pregnant, you know, daughter-in-law. I mean, these are, I don't even know how to explain that. Anyways, to what extent do you think WISE can be used, not just to measure current water insecurity, but to anticipate and target future climate-driven hotspots of vulnerability? Have you, you know, thought about that at all?
Yeah, so we had a session at COP28 that was called If Water Security, no, if Climate Change is a Shark, Water Security is a Shark's Teeth. And I'll just point you to the impact report where we show that like water insecurity, that climate events and water insecurity go hand in hand. And what we saw is that the likelihood of being water insecure increased both with when floods had occurred, because all of the data that we have are geospatially and temporally coded. So we can like assign when a flood happened or when a drought happened or a big storm happened. And we have a paper under review right now at Nature Water showing this in much more detail, that water insecurity and these climate events go hand in hand.
I think I'm sensing a covalence here, you know. Global water security, global water bankruptcy, you know, came out early this year and was shouting, you know, centralized water. I mean, water needs to be more visible in what we're talking about, you know. Then the water quality report also came out talking about pretty much the same thing. You know, let's reframe water. You know, we can do more, you know, with water than, you know, what has been done before. And I seem to be hearing the same kind of logic, the same kind of, you know, thinking here. You know, how so? Do you think we've gone full circle, you know, in terms of this, or what?
No, I don't think we've gone full circle, because I don't think people outside of the WASH sector are listening well enough to us. And I mean, I'm here to change that. Kavi is here to change that. I mean, what we can say now, like with no uncertainty, is that if you care about food security, you have to care about water security. You can see it like kind of viscerally, and it sort of makes sense, but now we have the empirical data to show that. And now, I mean, I mean, I myself was guilty of that as a person trained in nutrition. I was like, yeah, you know, I was there, a new PhD baby assistant professor, thinking like, the women are talking to me about water, but I don't really know about water and I don't know how to measure it. And let's do food security, ladies. But they were like, no. And I, you know, when I finally listened and then I reacted with, you know, inventing the scale or creating the scale with a lot of other people. But now, as a nutrition person, I know how to convince the nutrition world that water matters. So like the Y scales are, if you could say, like a bit of a gateway drug, but it really is pulling in people from other sectors. And I heard the same thing from Tim, what's his last name? He's the CEO of Water Aid. He came to an event that we had in London at the Shard. And he was saying, like, you know, what I really am excited about this is like, it's not preaching to the choir of other water people. It's like, we can connect water insecurity to, like I said, HIV viral load, or to physical, like interpersonal violence. Like we can connect other people who care about other sectors. And that's the magic here.
Okay, let me not dominate this and open the question to the floor. Dr. Rohit is next. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really phenomenal work, and congratulations on that. I'm just wondering about lessons that you could share in terms of, you know, over the course of 13 years, taking WISE from, you know, a concept to the level that it's at today. So lessons around scaling.
Yeah.
What can you talk a little bit about, you know, best practices or some key wins that have helped scale the tool, you know, as you've gone through this process?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Could you please tell me your discipline or your area of interest?
So I'm a doctor of public health and I'm the Innovation and Strategic Partnerships Officer for UNU-INWEH.
Okay, fancy, cool, thanks. Yeah, so a few things. One is it's like really important to keep it simple, and I think that, I mean, I'll just speak openly here. I think a lot of academics hide behind really complicated concepts to seem really smart and important. And I think that if you can, if you really are that smart, you should be able to describe what you're doing to someone like Annie, the woman who was with the water tank. So one of the things that I did was to be unafraid to be simple. And, 12 questions, unafraid to be simple and unafraid to see what other people needed. And, it's a shockingly small amount of data that often goes into policy. And so I have been really critiqued by colleagues in my own department for being reductionist in trying to say, like, how can you summarize a person's water security with a number? And I would say, like, my ethnography is great. I want a book prize for my like great writing about stuff. People don't read that stuff. I mean, not policymakers. They're really like, there's room for nuance, but I was afraid it was like kind of unafraid to be reductionist. After a while, I mean, I'm always afraid for everything, but like to keep it simple, to be willing to be short. I mean, I'm not saying that the whole story is in someone's number of 7 points, but that's an entry point for understanding that many people can. And the third is to keep the analysis straightforward. So I don't know, can you raise your hand if anyone has used the FIES, the Food Insecurity Experiences scale?
No.
Or measured food security at all? So it's really the analysis of it is really complicated. You need like an R package in order to like standardize it. And it's complicated, and I would say like that's why God made postdocs. Like I don't analyze the FIES data myself. But the WISE data can be just, it's like, my then little kid could do the math. It's just multiplication. There is some complications with equating that I can go into, and we are developing this like fancy package. So when we're making cross-country comparisons, we standardize it a little bit differently. But I would say just generally think about your audience, think about your message, be really clear. And maybe the fourth is don't be afraid to repeat yourself. Like I have been telling people that the WISE scales are a good idea for a while now. And I'll keep doing it because I really stand behind it. We don't have to keep, I mean, I think Javi can probably speak to this too. I mean, he's been saying water bankruptcy, and now finally people are listening. But it is pushing a rock up a hill for many years. Am I putting words in your mouth, Javi?
She's asking if she's putting words into your mouth. Anyways, jumping off that question, keeping it simple, I actually like that. Unafraid to be simple. I guess that would be my new mantra. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
But
Lots of academics would lose their jobs.
especially the Kaveh said, and lots of academics will lose their job if they dare to keep it simple. I guess that's why a lot of people are pushing tech, AI, to make it look as if, okay, like you said, we're doing, a very high level tech things. But I'm wondering, because there was a time we were thinking of incorporating, WISE skills into global water security assessment approach, that we're working on, and we weren't sure if it will eventually be, a kind of data that we can get, not just a topical one. In other words, to just have this snapshot per country, but for the kind of global assessment, we need one that it can have continuous monitoring. So if we do one in 2023, we want to do another one in 2026, we want to do another one in 2028, so have a think around that, how we could, adapt, this WISE skills data from the WISE skill into such a, continuous tracking, tool that one can now use, because it's already doing that work, comparison, national comparison, which is great, So any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we have taken both a top-down and a bottom-up approach to getting people to use the Y scales, and a large amount of data comes from Gallup World Poll, who I really appreciate, because they can do nationally representative sampling and then weighting, WEIGHT, all the things that we can say, like, this is a pretty accurate number for the country. And I thought when I gave them this great idea of the Y scales, they would say, oh, Sarah, yeah, definitely, we'll do this for you for free. They do not work for free, if you can believe the nerve. It's actually, like roughly $2 million to collect data on all 180 countries, roughly, where they work, 160. It depends a little bit, but like 100 plus countries. So I raised money to get nationally representative data for most of the world. I mean, we have it now for not all of the countries, but more than half of the countries in the world. And that's great. And it tells us, it's, like you said, a snapshot. But what I'm really hoping, and what seems to be happening, is that countries are now seeing the value and taking it up themselves. There's no way I want to be fundraising $2 million every year for the next decades. It's really hard. But what I have done is, with the translations and with the existing data, convince countries like Uganda, Malawi, Brazil, Mexico to implement this annually. And that's what's happening. So Mexico has been measuring water insecurity every year for the last 4. This will be the 5th year. They were the earliest of the adopters. And I'm hoping we can get it more into DHS and into mix. But we don't have the repeated longitudinal data for all of the countries in the world the way that I want it to, but it seems to be catching on.
Okay. Keep doing what you're doing, fingers crossed. Another question from the room, Dr. Miriam.
Thank you so much for a really fabulous presentation. I was wondering if you could talk us through a little bit about why the cost for doing this kind of research is so high, and if you think there might be new technologies or ways of bringing that cost down.
That's a great point. I mean, the scale itself is free to use. I make $0 every time, anytime someone uses it. The cost is not the scale itself, but it's the implementation of it. So, I mean, Gallup does a really great job collecting nationally representative data, and so they pay enumerators and all of that stuff. That's the cost there. When we can fit this into like another ongoing study like DHS, I mean, one of the other reasons I think that people have been happy to take this up is because it's a light lift. It's only 3 minutes, maybe 4, to ask these questions, so that it doesn't feel like, okay, I need 23 minutes of your hour-long survey. So when you can bolt it on to an existing one, it really is quite cheap. When it's fielded by itself, that gets expensive just as it is. So how to make it cheaper? One of the things we're doing is doing like surveys by telephone, or even by, so we're talking about using it in water utilities in Kenya to understand. In fact, the Minister of Water said it would be implemented by water utilities. So when people get their bill, they just are like keying in their how frequently have you, how frequently this, that, or the other. So that's almost free.
Okay, Dr. Abraham.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for the wonderful presentation. So we've used Y-Skill in Kenya, Uganda, and in Ghana. And that was during the COVID pandemic, yes. So in doing a comparative analysis, using that skill, how would you advise researchers take care of cross-cultural context?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, I'm going to say I would like you to check the map. I'll find the link, but we have an interactive map with all the places that the Y skills have been used, and it's updated regularly because now UNICEF is rolling it out in a bunch of humanitarian sites that we just learned about, or like it's been used now in Gaza every month for the last 2 years. So like I'm learning of places where where the Y skills are being used. I'm not here to take your data. I just like to connect people, like people in Turkey. There were 2 or 3 different researchers working in Turkey on Ys. They didn't know about each other, but through the map they could see, and now they're talking and not, duplicating work. So let me put that URL in the chat. And then one of the hallmarks of the scale is that it is what we would call cross-culturally comparable. So without doing a lot of fancy statistics, we have shown that people understand the concept of worry pretty similarly across, from Pakistan to Malawi to wherever. So generally we say they can just be compared directly. There is a little bit of like rash modeling that we're working on to maybe tweak what the categories are for how we assign low, medium, and high water security, but you can at least start with using it as is.
Okay. Dr. Rohit has another one.
Sarah, I was actually just wondering, you started touching on this already, but just, I guess in terms of like something like the DHS, mechanism like the DHS. So even when we were talking about, scaling before, the DHS provides, an amazing platform to be able to do that. Obviously, USAID pulled funding that kind of, had an impact on DHS. Now I think the Gates Foundation has kind of come back in to start funding it again. Can you talk a little bit about that process, as a mechanism for scaling? Like, have you had conversations with them? What does that process look like? And what is the potential of integrating, some of these water security related questions into the DHS?
Yeah, so there's a lot of sad moments in development and in the U.S. government in the last couple of years. One of those was like I had my proposal to submit new items to the DHS, and the chief economist of USAID is an economist here at Northwestern. He's still here, but he's no longer the chief economist. So that's Dean Carlin. I reviewed it with him, proposed, ready to submit, and the portal shut. So I think it's a damn good idea to put this in DHS. I have the proposal ready to share with anyone who will listen. And unbeknownst to me, but Rick Johnston at UNICEF told me, or like showed me, that Mozambique had even used the HY's 12 item alongside JMP in Mozambique. So now we're doing analyses. I teach a class called Turning Your Numbers into a Story, where the students were looking at the DHS HY's data. So there's clear proof of concept. I have the proposal. If you got an email address for me, honey, I will send it to whoever. It is ready to rock and roll, and it would be so much richer than any data that we get from Gallup because of all of the maternal and child health data that come along with it.
Absolutely. Well, let's connect on it. We're going through a similar process related to ORS and COPAX and trying to integrate that into the DHS. So yes, there's probably some lessons we can share there.
Call me.
Have any thoughts? Yeah.
Good, but one thing I'm gonna. So with all you've learned, why do you stay in academia? What makes you interested in academia?
Is this you offering me a job?
Yeah, of course. But yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that. And I was just with my daughter in New York City at the UN on Monday, and we were talking about kind of what she's 16, my older one. She's 16. Like, what is like your dream career? What is mine? And I was saying, I like working for the UN has always been like the most honorable thing I can think of. And now is not exactly the time to to get hired there. But I mean, it's been really lovely to be at Northwestern and have like a stable income. But I also think that there's much bigger, I don't know if I'm getting myself into trouble here. I think there's much bigger ponds to swim in than a single American university, and it would be an honor of a lifetime to work for an agency like any of the UN agencies, frankly. And I think I could bring some good skills to them.
Yeah, I know, of course, and I think, you know, academia also offers you a lot of freedom, right? So if you find your passion and I think your interest, then there is a lot of opportunities to make impact. Indeed, with this arrangement that we have with you, you're one of us, of course, you're already with the UN, but that's one of the reasons for it, right? To ensure that those people who have the interest, know what they're doing, and can benefit from the association with us, can make a bigger impact. And so I think that is the value of that, because UN also comes with a lot of restrictions. There are some freedom that you have and others don't, right? I mean, you're entitled to academic freedom. We are too, but if you go to some other UN agencies like diplomatic matters and all those things would prevent a lot of things as well. So every system has its shortcomings, but yeah.
True.
Yeah, but what is the
It's true,
advice to the early career researchers who would be watching these videos?
Yeah.
This video.
Sorry, what was the question?
So what is your advice to the early
Yeah,
career researchers, assistant professors, postdocs, PhD students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that the other thing I said to my daughter is that I have the freedom, like, you know, as a professor, I have the freedom to share what the prevalence is in any of the countries where we have collected Gallup data, because I don't have member states that I have to answer to. Like, I say this not in a like ownership way, like they're my data, like I will make them public, but I don't have to vet them with the government of the US or any other government. So that is the freedom. For early stage people, I would definitely say follow what you care about. I mean, it's really hard to keep going and repeating yourself sometimes. But if you have found a thing that you believe in, you will have that inner fire, and that inner fire has carried me a long way. I would also say, like, think about what the impact will be of what you're doing. I mean, not everyone has to be super applied. I have been a little bit kind of like looked down on for being so applied in the ivory tower, but it's what I really care about, and I have kept that flame. And I hope that eventually I will be seconded to work at UNICEF or work at WHO to bring some of this, and then I can bring that experience back to the university. So it doesn't have to be one or the other.
So, Sera, thank you so much for your time, for the insights you've shared, and for the bravery in connecting with the next steps, in the same platform, on the same platform, So congratulations on all the achievements, the wise skills, the great work that it's been doing, and hopefully it will do so much more. And for our audience, we want to say thank you for being a part of today's Science Talk. We look forward to having you join us again next week, Wednesday, the same time. So, and please do not forget to check our YouTube channel. It's all our Science Talks are there available on demand. Thank you, and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks, everyone.